So I have a pathological fear of boring people, and yet I need to lay a little groundwork for this particular interview. So I'm going to go fast. I'm going to try to be short, hard hitting, compelling, and then I'm going to turn it over to the star of the show, Mr. Paul Hasney. But really quickly, Stephen Covey wrote his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, more than a generation ago. My wife, Martha, read it then. She's ahead of me in most things, and this is another case. She read it then, and I have to say it didn't grab me. The title alone seemed a little how-to or simplistic or something. And probably a generation ago, I probably felt like I didn't have a lot to learn. So I could not have been more wrong. I eventually got immersed in 7 Habits, and I go back into it every couple of years for some new insights. And a number of organizations, including my employer, also see big value in making Stephen Covey principles part of their organizational culture. One of my colleagues introduced me to Paul Hasney, who's going to be our interview guest today. And for years, Paul was a licensed trainer in Stephen Covey principles. One of those core 7 principles in Covey's work is the habit of seek first to understand, then to be understood. A key premise of the neutral ground, our organization, is that society right now is long on people wanting to be understood, but short on people wanting to understand other people. That's a key premise. So it's very apt that we're having this interview. And Paul, I want to thank you for being part of this.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
And Paul, when you lead sessions on this habit, on seek first to understand, what are you trying to do? What's the mindset you're trying to promote, and why does it matter?
Well, let's put it in context. As you said before, the book is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Obviously, there are 7 habits. Seek first to understand, then to be understood is habit 5. What I'm trying to do is to shift people's thinking, because I think you would agree that what most adults do, most business people or just anyone, is I want you to understand me first. How many times have we heard people say, look, just listen to me, just hear me, hear my point? Where habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood, actually flips that around and says, I want to understand you first. And if I hear you first and I truly do understand, 2 things might happen. First is I might have my mind changed. And secondly, when you see me taking the time to understand you, you will do a better job of understanding me. You will return a favor in a lot of ways. So that's really the purpose, to initially to try to get people to shift their thinking from being heard first to hearing first.
In the larger world, outside of business, what do you see happening as maybe families or social groups get better at this habit?
Well, like anything else, I think what we have to understand is that listening is a skill. It's a skill like, hitting a tennis ball or a golf ball. And the more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. So if we can get people to really practice listening, I mean, if you think of things in a cultural sense or in the political sense, look, I know I'm a baby boomer, and to try to hear from the millennials or Gen Z sometimes is really hard for me. Even though I teach this stuff, it's a challenge for me because I look at them and think, well, maybe they're really not with the program. Maybe they think they know more than they do. And the truth of the matter is, I can probably learn from them. So if we can just create this culture or create this condition that says, I really do want to listen and I want to learn and I want to hear from you, it doesn't mean I'm always agreeing. But let's make one point here that I think is important. The habit says seek first to understand. It doesn't say seek first to agree. So I can understand and not agree. I can hear your point of view and look at you and say, John, you're telling me A, B, C, D. I get that. Unfortunately, that's not the way I see this. So if I understand that, at least I can do a better job of trying to maybe meet you in the middle somewhere.
So even if I'm trying to persuade you, I'm going to be more effective persuading you if I know what your actual beliefs are. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And so it doesn't mean I have to agree with you,
Right.
but it does mean I really do have to listen and understand. And when I listen and understand, then maybe my point of view changes, or maybe your point of view changes, or maybe we can find some middle ground. Because if you look at things, let's just take the political world. It seems like politicians never want to meet in the middle. It's either my way or the highway, and nothing ever gets done. So if we can get people to actually listen and say, okay, of the 10 things we're arguing about, we agree on 5. Let's do those 5, and then we'll work on resolving the other 5. But if we don't listen and understand, then we're not really hearing what the ones are that we agree on.
When you're in the classroom on this, when you're with a group of people who've signed up to help, you're coaching them on how to practice this habit, what's challenging? What's the hard part, and how do you overcome that?
The hard part is, I can't think of another way to say this. The hard part is sort of clearing your mind of what your outcomes are. I want to push that aside, and I want to hear you. Even though I know, I think we should take a left turn and you think we should take a right turn. How do I just take my left turn idea out for a minute, open my mind, and truly hear your point of view? That's the hard thing, because I would say, 80% of, I deal with business people mostly, and 80% of business people don't practice this. They have an idea and they want to run with it. And the guy sitting at the desk next to them may have a better one, but their mind's not open enough to hear that. So that's the hard part. It's just saying, okay, let me put my idea aside for right now, and let me see if I can understand John's idea. And then
we have a place we're trying to go, and it feels like you're slowing down, right? I was this place I'm trying to go, and having to stop and listen to you, especially when I'm pretty sure, rightly or wrongly, that you're not going to be helping me advance my goal. It seems like a detour. Paul, if there's one impression you would like viewers of this interview to take away, if you could influence positively one mindset out there in the viewership, what would that be?
I would want people to, first of all, listen. Okay. Now, the second thing is that if you understand the 7 habits, part of habit 6 is, of course, synergize. But the idea of synergize is to seek something that's called the third alternative, which means, John, you have an idea on how we should do this. I have an idea on how we should do this. Those ideas are different. Is there a third idea that we haven't thought about that's better than yours and mine? And there's a process for seeking that. That's what I would want. I would want people to look for a third alternative, and it could be a third, fourth, or fifth alternative. But instead of saying, okay, here's my idea, let's run with it, good luck. Let's listen to yours, listen to mine, use our skills, and try to find a better way than what you came up with and what I came up with. There's a process for doing it. If I could influence that, I would feel like I hit a grand slam home run, because that's what, I don't see anybody trying that. That's just one of those things where you either hold on to yours, I hold on to mine, we stumble and fumble our way and eventually come out with something.
Thank you. Is there a question I didn't ask you this morning that you wished you had been asked?
No, the only thing I would say is sort of to put a big wrap on this. As somebody who's been really close to this material for over 20 years, I think it's applicable more now than ever. I think when we look at our society, when we look at our culture, when we look at our businesses, I think the practice of the 7 habits is more critical now than it's ever been. And I think if we can get people to understand that and at least start putting pieces of this into practice, it'll change a lot of things for the better.